Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Aisha Khan, and on behalf of the Muslim Unity Center's Education Committee, I welcome you all to our hybrid, which is in-person and virtual Friday night lecture. So, alhamdulillah, we are very excited. We really would like anybody who is able to come to the masjid, be in person, because we are streaming live from the masjid. But however, we still want to give everyone an option who are not able to attend in person. You can still enjoy our programming, inshallah. So, alhamdulillah, if you have probably been watching our programs, we have started a mental wellness series monthly. So, inshallah, we are trying to bring a mental health wellness type of program once a month. So, which is very exciting, and this is kind of like my personal thing. I really, want to try and work with amazing professionals here, which, I'm honored to bring mental health programs and really destigmatize mental health in our community. So, inshallah, and we have so many resources as we are, learning and going with these programs. Inshallah, we'll be able to definitely destigmatize that. So for tonight, our topic is strengthening our relationships, family matters, right? Yes. So I'm so honored that we have our mental health professionals who are within, I kind of feel they are right from home, right? Like they are from our community. So Dr. Asra Hamzavi, Dr. Loubna Alkhayat, I'll introduce them shortly. So I'm really honored that they actually came here. I mean, as you know, we have cold weather and we are still in COVID, pandemic, but alhamdulillah, we're trying to be, safe and still do the programs. Before I do the introduction, I also want to let everyone know that please feel free to write your questions. So if you are virtually, watching this program, send the questions. We have people watching that, and then we can have our speakers respond to them. So to introduce the first speaker to the far right, Dr. Asra Hamzavi. She's a board-certified adult outpatient psychiatrist and the founder of Hamzavi Psychiatry and Wellness Center. She has spoken on various topics from mental illness to the impact of digital technology on the individual and relationships. Dr. Hamzavi received her bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, her master's from Wayne State University, her medical degree from Michigan State University. She completed her residency in general psychiatry at Henry Ford Hospital before starting her own practice. She is a proud wife and mother of 4 children, ranging from elementary to high school. Wow. She is passionate about increasing awareness of the mind-body-spirit connection and normalizing mental health as the foundation of our health. Amazing. All right, welcome, Dr. Hamzavi. And then to my immediate right is Dr. Loubna Alkhayat. She's a licensed professional counselor, national board certified counselor, and a certified clinical trauma professional. Loubna earned her doctorate degree from Wayne State University, where she works as a lecturer. She also has a private practice in West Bloomfield, Oakland Counseling Center. She provides counseling, psychotherapy, and clinical supervision. Welcome, Dr. Loubna Alkhayat. So, as I've mentioned, please feel free to send your questions. And for we have in-person audience as well. So, we have some time saved for Q&A. So please feel free. All right, I'm going to give this to this panel here. Take it away, ladies.
All right, thank you so much, Sister Aisha. Assalamu alaikum. I think we both really appreciate the effort that the Muslim Unity Center continues to make in making sure that our communities are healthy in mind, body, and spirit. So thank you, Imam Al-Masri, for not letting this program go, and for Sister Aisha, who has to constantly, keep after us as we try to organize these programs. So, and thank you all who are taking time out of your Friday night to learn a little bit more as we learn more. Loubna and I decided this time that there's so many mental health topics, but what doesn't get enough attention is marriage. And I had to ask my husband's permission to share personal stories, and he said it all depends on what you share. So I'll try to be pretty good at editing there, but as a whole, we're not here as examples of perfect families or marriages. We're here as individuals who are trained in mental health. I'm a psychiatrist, and she's a therapist, and while psychiatrists don't typically do marital counseling, I am constantly referring patients to marital counseling community members. Sometimes we have, it's very often that we have community members who don't want to seek help, so one partner will come in and talk to me about the marital issue and say that my spouse won't get help. So I end up treating that individual for things that are really more related to the marriage. And I have to remind people over and over again that there's not a pill for a struggling marriage. There's mental health professionals who are trained to help you with in therapy. And we're going to go through some kind of basics of communication and strengthening relationships. We'll also, if we can, cover some of the myths of counseling. Now, what's that? Oh, so one thing I want to emphasize is that you get out of your marriage what you put in. Anything in life, you're going to get out what you put in. And I think there's a lot of assumptions that people make that, I don't need a coach to teach me how to be married. Everyone gets married. My parents got married. It's not a big deal. This should be pretty intuitive. And what we don't realize is that we have one primary, in most cases, we have one primary model of what a relationship is, and that is our parents, whether our parents are together or not together. And so that really informs how we enter our own relationships. And the family dynamics within our individual homes that we grew up in informs how we're going to, raise our own families or how we're going to engage in a marriage. And so if one family, for example, doesn't communicate very much, they have a certain way of handling issues or enjoying themselves that's very, very different from another family, you try to put these two individuals together who are otherwise very close to their families, and they may not know how to have this relationship. I remember speaking to a Muslim woman who, just in the community, she was in her 50s, and she said that when she got married, she thought certainly that something was wrong with her marriage because her and her husband were having some disagreements, and they had some arguments, and she thought that wasn't normal because her parents never fought in front of them. And on the one hand, she was grateful that they didn't have to witness, disagreements and arguments. On the other hand, she didn't know that it's normal, and she didn't know how to kind of fix it when problems came about. So I do want to mention before we kind of get into the specific, there's a book that we're actually going to be using a template for, but there are some things that are, specific to religious communities, whether that's Muslim communities or other communities of faith, and that is, cultural and spiritual abuse. This is not something we're going to get deep into, but it is something that I see a lot of, which is people using the religion to kind of justify their behaviors, saying things like, I'm not going to let you make those decisions because you don't even pray, or what you as the wife saying to the husband, what's yours is mine from an Islamic perspective, so I can spend whatever I want. These are ways that people can use faith and then sometimes culture, of saying that you have to feed my parents 3 times a day, or you have to support my parents financially, whatever the case may be, where people bring in their cultural baggage or their kind of misperceptions of the Sunnah or our religion, and that gets used within a marriage in an unhealthy way. One thing is also that people tend to believe that there's really no major issues within the Muslim community. I think there's some kind of denial and even arrogance at times where people say, this doesn't happen in our communities, and this only happens to non-Muslims. Absolutely not true. We are just like everybody else. We have the same problems. We may handle them differently, but just the moment that you think that it can't happen to you is exactly when you are more vulnerable to having issues. So you can't be vigilant and you can't be proactive if you don't even know that it's possible that you're going to have issues down the line. I heard something years ago, and it was a talk on marriage, and the speaker said that the best thing that you can do for your children is to love their parent. And many of us come from cultures where everything's about the child. Everything is about, making sure you focus on your kids, and both parents go from being a couple to just being co-parents. This is a struggle that's common, and it's something that I can relate to, because it's a really huge shift when you go from having 20 plus years of just being single to now having a partner and children. So I think that statement is incredibly powerful and true. And I assumed earlier when Loubna said, I can't answer my text right now because I'm getting dinner on. I said, oh, you're a good mommy. She said, I'm actually feeding my husband. And I said, oh, okay, then you're a good wife, and this is exactly where you should be. Alhamdulillah. So I think that there is so much to be said for that, and there's so much to learn for, caring for one another first, and then caring for your children. I think that, the kind of Hollywood idea of what marriage is has really, skewed people's perceptions of what's real and what to expect. So these are the types of conversations that I'm hoping we're going to have more of, where we can talk about what's real and what to expect. And the way that we're going to do this first talk on this topic is by covering the book, or just highlighting the summary of this book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. So this is kind of more from a Christian perspective, and it very easily applies to our traditions as well. But he wrote this book a number of years ago. It's a bestseller. It's something that marriage counselors use all the time and refer their clients to it. And it's not that it's earth-shattering concepts. These are not completely new or earth-shattering concepts. It's more that it's simple. That's exactly why it's valuable, because he has these 5 love languages as he describes them, and that's the different ways that we communicate with one another, and we kind of express what we value. So we're going to go through those briefly, and then we will also make sure that we have time for some other areas to cover. So.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. My name is Loubna, and as Asra was saying, although this topic is about strengthening our relationship in families, we felt over the last year we've seen more and more of couples coming with problems and issues, and which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's like you don't want to see more problems, but it's a good thing that people are seeking help. And it's expected with the stress that we've been going through over this year. Asra did a great introduction that we will be focusing on this book, The 5 Love Languages. I think a lot of people heard of it, probably not many people read it. I recommend it to all my couples, all my clients who come for couple counseling. It's a really good book, and it's really easy to read. But before I get into getting in the first, the 5 languages, 5 love languages, I just want to do some reminders, remind you of a few things that I also have seen in my office. A lot of times we get discouraged because we're expecting to be perfect, especially as parents. I've seen so many mothers who feel like it's much easier to be a professional, to be doing a lot of things outside the house. But when it comes to the role as a mother, this is something they are scared of, because no matter what they do, they feel guilty, they feel that they're not doing enough. So the concept of expecting that we have to do all, especially with relationship in families and parenting, we're expecting to do perfect, and that's wrong. We were laughing, Asra and I, when we were talking about our families. I'm wondering if people look at our families, what do they say? We're having issues and having problems is expected. We're always a work in progress, and that's what we should keep in mind. There's no end. There's no end to this process. It's something that we need to keep on working. So benefits always come with problems. Keep that in mind, especially in relationship and the families. Learning from failures. We will fail. We will do a lot of mistakes. We'll just keep learning from these mistakes. And always making the best choice within the circumstances. No matter what decision you're making, like which school to send your kids to, what programs to enroll them in, what cars to get them, which school to send, which college to go to, can they stay inside the house, outside the, no matter what, we're making the best decision within the circumstances we have. What works for my family probably does not work for other families. So I see a lot of parents or families coming back, like always revisiting their decisions in the past, like, I wish I didn't do that, I wish I didn't do that. It's keep in mind that this is expected, that's normal. And again, not to compromise personal life or professional life, because a lot of people feel like being professional is much easier than your role in your family. So I just wanted to make this reminder because I noticed a lot of people talk about it in the office. So moving to the book that we want to cover, we'll try to be brief. The main idea of the 5 love languages is we need to speak the love language of your partner, your child, your other family member, not the love that you want. Each one of us, we all need all the 5 languages, but each one of us has a primary love language. And that's what we feel like when you speak this language for us, this is where we feel we are loved, we're appreciated, we are taken care of. So a lot of times the problems happen when you, like for me, for example, act of service is my love language. If I'm doing that for my kids and my husband, assuming that this is their love language too, I might missing a lot of things. So, this is like it applies to a lot of things. You need to give people what they want, and that takes a lot of paying attention, being aware of others, especially your family member. So the objective is not getting something you want, but doing something for the well-being of the one you love, even if you're not very comfortable, even if you're not very natural at it. But that means paying attention. So the first love language is word of affirmation. Okay, it's very simple, but like Asra said, a lot of these things that we're going to talk about, they're very intuitive, they're very easy to follow, and that's fine. Actually, it applies to all things in a relationship. There is no rocket science. It's very simple things. We just need to pay attention to it. So, very simple verbal compliments or word of appreciation. A lot of times we forget to do that. Take 1 week or 2 weeks where you really focus on complimenting or giving encouragement to your partner and notice what's going to happen. To your kids, just focus on that and see what's going to happen. And when you provide word of affirmation, compliments or encouragement, it needs to be sincere and it needs to be precise, not saying things that probably you don't mean, or things that it's not in them. So, for example, it could be physical. It could about their physical appearance. It could be about something they did for you, about something they're doing good, but it has to be sincere. Another thing is and I put it as an example, encouraging words, especially with the areas of insecurities. All of us have areas of insecurities. And as married people, preferably, or assuming that you know the areas of insecurity of your partner, you need to focus on that too. Because believe it or not, people, couples, even if they don't show it, they really care about their husband or their wife's opinion about their insecurities, things that they are not insecure about. So, focusing on encouraging your partner when it comes to their insecurities is really critical. Kind words, gentleness, and empathy is also very important, even when we're angry, even when we're fighting. not saying things that really hurt the other person or attacks the areas of insecurities. With word of encouragement, try not to bring the past. And I see it a lot of times when couples are coming for therapy. It's like bringing the past over and over, or the past mistakes. In marriages, we don't want to keep track of everything your partner did wrong in the past. Moving on and forgiveness is really important. I think that's it for the word of affirmation. Again, it's very simple, just like saying kind things and focusing on the good things there that your partner is doing. When you're trying to provide words of affirmation, you're doing two things. You're really paying attention to that too. You're paying attention to the things that your partner is doing to provide these compliments. So, and moving to the second one, which is quality time.
So the second language, and you know, just to kind of elaborate just on this whole concept of a love language, the author talks about the concept of a love tank. Is it called a love tank?
Love tank.
Yeah. So he calls it a love tank, and so basically, you know, if our tanks are empty, then we are going to behave one way, and if our tanks are full, then we're going to behave another way. And I think something that is really easy when you initially get married, and if the husband and wife are really, you know, enamored by each other and really into this marriage, then hopefully, you know, that's easy. It's obvious. You know, you do all of these things. You probably do them very easily. What happens though over time, whether it's just you know, the stress of life or education or jobs or having kids, or you know, sick parents or whatever it is, those things start to be taken for granted. And you know, we're talking about things that sound so basic. I mean, anyone could tell you have to say nice words and be kind to somebody. But these are the things that we actually forget. These are the things that we take for granted. You know, the ayah in the Quran where, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you know, you cannot even say a word of contempt towards your parents. You know, he's talking about your parents because you may take them for granted. Whereas your children, it's pretty natural for parents to focus on their children. Nobody has to remind somebody, for the most part, in a healthy relationship to take care of your child. But you may become neglectful of your parents, and you may easily become neglectful of the partner that you now signed a contract with, and you say, well, where are you going to go now? You actually have to work at it. So these sound like basic things, but these are actually the things that start to break down that lead to all the problems afterward. So love language number 2 is quality time. I don't know if there's ever been a time in history that people's quality time has been more compromised. We've got digital technology. We've got, you know, prior to the pandemic, we had, you know, soccer, you know, matches, or you have, you know, work hours that go into the evening, or you have a number of different distractions. And the last thing that people are really doing is spending time with one another. And they actually have this illusion that they're spending time with one another because they're texting or they're emailing or they're sending pictures or they're, you know, on Instagram and they're checking each other's things and liking them. And that's not the same thing as face-to-face connection and quality time. And I think we've all heard a lot about the risks and the damaging effects of digital technology, and we all know some of the benefits of them. But I think that what this kind of model does is kind of help you stop and say, let's break this down to which part of these things, you know, which areas are we weak in and which areas are we pretty good in. So quality time means giving your undivided attention. That means not looking at a screen every time you're together. I mean, maybe sometimes you are watching something together. Maybe you're watching funny YouTube videos, whatever it is. But ideally, you're spending some time as well where you're making eye contact, you're taking walks together, you know, cooking together or starting a hobby together. Meeting up for lunch in the middle of the work week when you don't normally do something like that. So doing things that you wouldn't normally do that's out of routine really helps keep a relationship from getting very stale, and it keeps you from taking it for granted. Playing games with your children and as a family, and definitely vacationing together. It's very common for people now to vacation in large groups, which has its own value, and it's wonderful for the kids as well and the parents. But also look at the time that you're spending as a family with the mom and the dad and children, because there's so many distractions, and it's very easy to kind of, let the kids go off and play on their own, but then you're not really connecting as a unit, as a family unit. The routine piece, I think, is something that I hear a lot of. It may not happen in 1 or 2 years, and in fact, I think he says in the book that it takes 2 years for people, on average, to start to change some of these behaviors and kind of fall out of love. I said, if not out of love, but no longer be in this kind of stage of obsession and infatuation that some people have. So it takes work to kind of keep that going. So the idea of being together is being present. It's not just sitting in the same room. It is actually, engaging in a conversation, looking each other in the eye, and being able to talk about what's going on with you, and being able to share openly and know that that person cares and is curious and interested. So it's really important to focus on what you're hearing, and so when you're present and somebody is talking to you, your first thought should be, I'm here to listen to what they're sharing. I'm not here to prepare my remarks that are going to go after that. I'm just taking in what that individual is saying, what my partner is saying. So maintaining eye contact when they're talking, giving them your undivided attention, and don't multitask. I mean, you can be doing the dishes sometimes, but what we're talking about is when you're specifically carving out quality time. Listening for feelings. When your partner's expressing to you, how they felt about that meeting at work, or, this opportunity, or, how, their child treated them that day, or how they treated their child. Those are emotionally filled topics, and so that's where you kind of may need to kind of stop, pause, and look and see where they are with things. Paying attention to body language, and as you're having a conversation, maybe they're no longer making eye contact. Maybe you said something that's kind of hurtful and you didn't even realize it. And then never, just basically developing a habit of never interrupting. So those are, again, things that are obvious, but things that we don't pay attention to. The average person listens for 17 seconds before they interrupt, and if you want to have fun with that, you can time your spouse without telling them and see how long it takes them. So learning to share your thoughts and emotions. This is a very difficult thing for many people. If you are raised in a family where it's very customary to express your emotions, and there's no problem with expressing it, or that emotions are shared and accepted and discussed and dealt with or validated, then that's one way to be. And there's families where it's completely inappropriate to say something about how you feel, being angry, disappointed. And so, there's families where they will shame their children for bringing things up. So if you grow up in a house like that, and you get married to somebody who grew up in a very different home, who's very used to communicating and expressing themselves, you may not know what to do with that. You may have no idea how to relate to that person. You may not know how to hear them, and you certainly may not know how to share. And that may leave your partner feeling like you don't care, and that you don't trust them. So the ability to share of yourself is critical. And another thing is just this whole idea of rationalizing your emotions. So, I think we tend to do this a lot with our kids. They bring us a problem, and instead of validating them, we go right to fixing the problem. And that's not necessarily what they need. At first, the first thing they need to know is, did you hear me? And it's no different for a spouse. Did you hear me? Do you care about what I'm saying? Does it matter to you? And so you do things like you validate them and say, that sounds like it was really hard. And, I remember someone saying, that's not how we talk. That's kind of weird. And it is kind of weird, and it isn't necessarily how we all talk. But you can find your own way of validating somebody. But whatever it is, you do have to kind of on some level acknowledge that I hear what you're saying, and it matters to me. And you can kind of show them that you listen by saying, so you're telling me that you went to work and, no one else showed up, and you had this really important meeting. I would be so mad if that happened to me. So being able to kind of really echo back, this is what happened, and this mattered to me, and really show that you care about it too. Your ability to share of yourself also, it helps others share. So if you're closed off, they may not be open, and you're going to miss out on being able to have that quality relationship. So the third love language is gifts. So this is kind of a universal love language. I think every culture has, this tradition of giving gifts when you get married or when you have children or, these special times. But then there's also, this idea of just giving gifts because you care about them, because you're so grateful that you woke up today and they were here. Those are the things that get missed, and those are opportunities of, filling someone else's love tank that's easy. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be time consuming. It could be a flower. It could be a book. It could be a notebook because you know that your spouse wants to write. But things that show that you know them and you or you want to know them and you want to encourage them to do the things that they love to do. The Prophet ﷺ, this is our tradition. That exchanging gifts, is what will allow you to increase in your love for one another. And it's also a gift to give your time. So if you may have a lot going on, but you know that you haven't really been paying attention to your spouse, knowing that you have to take at least a little bit of time in the day, 15 minutes in the day, to stop and check in with them is incredibly valuable. One area where I see people kind of trip up is that they feel like there has to be grand gestures. And I feel like social media has made that a bigger thing because everything gets blasted on social media and needs to be bigger and better than the next person. It doesn't have to be. Turn that off. Focus on the person that you married. Focus on what you care about and what they care about, and make it very authentic for you. And doing small and regular gifts. They don't have to be completely new things every single week. I mean, it could be that every Jummah you're giving your wife a flower. That's a hint to my husband. Or it could be, like the acts of service. I mean, that is a gift. I mean, if you're cleaning up after the kids and they didn't really, expect you to, that's a gift of your time. So acts of service, Loubna said that she knows that to be her love language. There is actually in the book and online, they have a quiz. One is actually, there's even a quiz for, children, love languages for children, for teens. So, you can take a look at that after and see which category you fall into. But, doing things that they wouldn't necessarily expect you to do, you don't even have to like it. And in fact, if you don't like it and you do it, you get more points. You fill up that tank even more. So being helpful and seeing how your spouse is doing that day, and if they come home tired or you get home and they're tired and exhausted and you think, I'm tired and exhausted too, but I can do this one thing. That one small gesture of taking the laundry basket downstairs could actually fill up, their love tank. So Gary Chapman in the book says requests give direction to love, but demands stop the flow of love. And so how you say it means everything too. So you can say it nicely, or you can say it with a criticism. And I think, when there's a lot going on and there's kids running around and all that, it's very easy to just kind of instantly go to the critical piece, and that doesn't necessarily invite someone to do what they wouldn't otherwise do. And when someone does kind of tend to your love language of acts of service, it's your job to then thank them and to be appreciative and acknowledge it and say, I know you hate doing dishes, but I'm so grateful that you did that. It really made it a lot easier for me. So acknowledging that, because when you fail to do that, then eventually that could result in some resentment, and they eventually might stop doing it altogether.
Okay, so the last love language is physical touch. It's really funny when I talk to the couples, the guys always say, oh, my love language is physical touch. I always have to explain that it's not only what you think, it's not only intimacy, it's physical touch could be anything. It could be a hug, it could be like patting on the back or rubbing the back, or just like holding hands. So there are so many, probably you guys are aware of that, so many studies that support that the benefits or the importance of touch. Like babies are born in the world, this is the only communication they understand. This is the only language they understand, is to be held, to be cared for, you to be touched. The more you like touch the baby, the healthier the attachment. The attachment is better, the more the baby is calm. And that applies to all of us, right? With the kids, when a child is in a tantrum, sometimes you don't have to say anything, you just like hug the child and the child will be calm. So this is really important between couples too. It could be really just like any kind of touch, like greet each other with a hug or a kiss or whatever, but make it a habit. Don't let it be like rare. If we see people in crisis, this is the natural thing. This is the first thing we react when a death happen or a trauma happen. People tend to hug each other. This is the first reaction because this is how people communicate love and support for each other. So this is something that communicate that I care about you, I love you, even if I don't have time to probably have quality time with you or like sit down and have 15, 20 minutes conversation. That's all it takes. There are so many studies that shows that touching would like decrease stress hormones. People who are get more touched, their immunity system improves. And I'm not going to go too much into that. There are cultural considerations, of course. There are some probably culture where probably the touching between the couples is not appropriate in front of others, even just like the mere like holding hands. So I know this needs to be taken into consideration, but it's healthy like for kids to see their parents like expressing love through touching too. I had a couple in the office where like the wife like likes her husband to hug her more, for example, but he's not comfortable with that. He doesn't like a lot of physical touch. And that's what we're talking about. If this is not your love language, if you're not comfortable with that, it takes more effort and time. But if you think about it, this is how I fill the love tank of my partner. If I'm gonna provide that and make my wife is happier or my husband happier, is it worth it or not? Keeping in mind too that relationships in general, if they're not getting better, they're getting worse. Okay, this relationship don't stay in the same place. So if you leave it like to time, it's definitely if you're not working on it, you're not putting effort, then probably it's getting worse. I think that's the main idea of the love language is the 5 love languages is paying attention to what makes your partner happy, what communicate love for your partner. And I, like Asra said, I recommend taking the test, even for kids. Just to like summarize, in other than the 5 love languages, the secrets of stable relationships. I wanted to talk very briefly about that. The main thing is, like I always tell the couples that come to my office, you need to higher your expectation. You need to expect more of your marriage. If a lot of times we tend to tolerate a lot of negativity in the marriage. We tend to like forget that this is probably not the way we want it to be. So taking care of the kids, going to work, and we get into this mode of like just on automatic mode, and we stop paying attention to the relationship. Probably the fight, the negativity, the not spending time together become a habit, become accepted. And then, like before you know it, we started drifting apart. And 20 years pass, and then you feel like I've seen so many couples after 20, 30 years who like feel lonely, like they're in a lonely marriage because they haven't addressed these problems. The threshold for negativity is like the tolerance for negativity is really high. So higher expectations. Don't just accept a very low connection, emotional connection. I think, yeah. Another thing is repair as a way for emotional connection. We are going to make mistakes no matter what. You're trying to say kind words, you're trying not to criticize, you're trying to spend quality time, but a lot of times life will take us, right? And we're going to do all of these. So the studies of Dr. Gottman found that couples who are happier in their marriage, they do a lot of repair. So like, for example, after a fight, they notice that couples who are happier and their relationship is better and they have friendship, they tend to repair more. Whether like soothing like your partner or soothing yourself, taking a time off, and then coming back to like, you know what, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, or you know what, you're right, we should have sit down and address that. So repair is the key. We're gonna make mistakes, we're gonna hurt each other unintentionally, but repair is the key. And last thing that I want to say is, and that's the main idea of the book, is love is a choice, okay? In marriages, love is a choice. Yes, at the beginning, this is like the infatuations and the intimacy that's probably take 1 to 2 years, according to the book, it takes 2 years on average, maximum, for this to go away, to fade. But then the love doesn't come with time. It comes with effort. It comes with intention and being aware and paying attention. So it is a choice. It is a choice of every day in the family relationships and between couples that a lot of times we take our families and our partner for granted. We put so much effort like at work or in our professional life or with friends. But then when it comes to family, it's just like we leave it to like, yeah, we live together. This is like, we don't need to do much, but it's actually the opposite. And I will finish with that.
We all know that, it's important to care about your partner and spouse, and we were talking about these small things that can really bring big, big returns. So I invite you, and Loubna invites you to take the quiz afterward and see if you can learn a little bit about yourself and also your spouse. But kind of shifting gears a little bit towards, counseling. We get a lot of requests for marital counseling. Loubna does do marital counseling, and I refer and I do some within the context of patients that I see. But it is something that has a lot of kind of myths associated with it, especially in the Muslim community. And one of the biggest myths is that the imam can be your marital counselor. So I think Imam al-Masri can attest to the fact that that is not what he trained for. He has expertise in, Islamic, fiqh, and that's his scholarship. At the same time, I know some imams will say, okay, I'll meet with a couple a few times, but then after that, I refer them out to a marital counselor. Other times, imams will do the counseling from their perspective, beginning to end, but understand that that is not what they were, trained to do unless they actually have a degree in it, and that's pretty rare to find. Some people feel like you really just need to wait. You don't do marital counseling until things are really, really bad and they're unbearable. That's absolutely false. You don't wait until things are unbearable. That's actually when it's sometimes going to be too late. And so when people say, oh, marital counseling doesn't work, my friend still got divorced, it may not be that marital counseling didn't work. It may be that they went too late and there's too much damage done and there's not enough openness on both sides. So you go to marital counseling. You can go to premarital counseling. So that would be the ideal situation, is you go before you're married, and then rather than giving people, lavish gifts, offer to pay for their marital counseling after they get married. And that doesn't sound like the most romantic thing in the world, but in fact, it's an investment that will pay off. Some people kind of feel like, no, only crazy people go to therapists. I'm a psychiatrist. I don't use that word, but it is something that people say, that something has to be wrong with you, and we're really normal, and we're not like those people, and that's simply not true. We refer people who are professionals. We refer people who are, highly educated, people who are not terribly educated, and the problems are often the same. So kind of recognizing that people are people and we have very similar patterns and tendencies, will help you kind of mind your own ego and focus on the good of the relationship. So some people are afraid to go to therapy, and I hear this a lot, I'm sure you do too, Loubna, is that it means that we're going to get divorced, which is actually the opposite. You're going there because you are trying to repair and restore a relationship, or build one if there wasn't a great one to begin with. So that's exactly what might prevent you from getting divorced. Culturally, this is a huge issue, is feeling like you're airing your dirty laundry to somebody else. Well, this is the same thing as going to a physician with, your chronic cough. They are bound by HIPAA to not disclose what's shared with them within a counseling session. These are professionals, and I can't think of a more valuable person to go to than somebody, number one, who has experience, and number two, would get in very big trouble if they actually disclosed what you shared.
It's not only what you shared, it's just like even like you are a client or a patient. We can't share that. We've seen someone.
Yeah, even seeing someone, if you're at a party and you see someone, you technically, I don't know how it is for in therapy, for psychiatry, we can't even acknowledge somebody. I might be able to just say salam in general, but I can't even let on that I know somebody. So that's part of, the ethical guidelines of protecting people's privacy. And then this idea that someone who doesn't know me can't help me, that's exactly the value of it. You want to go to someone who's going to be neutral, someone who doesn't already have an opinion about you and the way that you talk and the way you behave. You want someone who's going to be able to kind of see this objectively from both sides. And, this isn't exactly true, that your counselor has a GPS device for each of you so that you can kind of, find your way back when you're drifting apart. But in a sense, they do provide you with a roadmap. They help you kind of navigate some of the, and identify the places where you kind of got lost. It's not true that a therapist is going to solve all your problems. They're going to equip you with tools and help you have some insight into where you're kind of falling into trouble. And it's not true that couples will, or that therapists are going to take sides. Again, their neutrality is actually why you're going to a professional. Their experience and their knowledge and their neutrality. Some people think that the therapist is just going to sit there and smile and nod, and there are therapists who do that, but when it comes to couples counseling, that's not typical at all. The couples therapist is actually giving feedback and helping the couple reflect on, did you hear, I want you to hear what your wife just said, or I want you to hear what your husband just said, and, can you look them in the eye and kind of try to find the emotion that's coming behind that so that they can actually walk you through finding that emotional love language. Some people believe that therapy would take forever and that you're going to sit there and invest, year after year, and that's not the case. It just depends on the relationship. It also depends on the two individuals that are coming into that marriage. If they come with a history of trauma, if they come with a history of, their own parents being divorced, they may have their own issues that they have to address and work through, some of their own fears. So it doesn't necessarily take forever. So many couples will go get some basic tools, be able to use them, apply them, and they see a big difference. People are afraid that others are going to know that you're seeing a therapist. Again, we talked about the confidentiality, that's not permitted. And then, therapy, the idea that it's unaffordable. It is true that it's typically not covered by insurance, which is really, really unfortunate. I've occasionally heard of out-of-network, being covered for marital counseling, but many counselors will work with your budget. They might just have you come in every other week to make sure that you can have an affordable kind of treatment plan. and just to remind you that divorce is going to cost a lot more emotionally and financially. So the idea that love is a choice, that Loubna brought up, many of you have heard, this saying that Abu Huraira narrated the Prophet ﷺ said, on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give shade to 7, and among them are 2 people who love each other for only for the sake of Allah. And this is actually what I put on my wedding invitation when we got married 21 years ago, alhamdulillah. And it means something completely different after 21 years than it did when I put it on the cards at that time. Alhamdulillah, I truly understand that, because there's times that yes, you care about that person, but it's hard. It's really, really hard to kind of show them and get past your own resentments and disappointments, and you do it for the sake of Allah. And when you do that, the reward comes. So the idea that you spend less time earning a living and more time earning a loving. So I don't know if we have time. We might want to pause there.
Yeah, let's ask a question. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Asra and Dr. Loubna. Just wondering, can you hear my voice from here? Okay. So I think this topic was really on point, even though I'm aware of it, or many of you probably have been aware of this book. Just listening and then getting those reminders is so, so crucial. And I know we don't have much time, but one thing that really kind of I was kind of just thinking about it when you were talking about the quality time, Dr. Asra, was especially these days of digital age. Everyone, right, we all, I mean, I'm not just going to blame the kids. As parents, we all have the phone 24/7 almost, right? So that's kind of what the families have become. And especially now you see it's so common that people go to a restaurant, hopefully when, everything is good, or pre-COVID, most of the time or some of the time where you're waiting for the food, when the food is not there, everyone in the family or friends, probably family more times, that they're just on the phones. And I've seen couples just on the phones because you don't have anything to talk or you don't know what to talk. So just a quick thing I just want to ask Dr. Asra Hamzavi, that I know we have some youth here. I'm so glad actually you guys, hung out here. So just kind of to put them on the spot, that kids are so busy, right? As parents, we all oh my God, I wish I have some time, especially as they grow older, teenage and above. What do you advise them? What can they do to just give some quality time to their parents? Because parents are always doing things, right? They really in return want quality times with their kids. So what can they do?
I mean, I think the first thing to ask is, are we as parents giving our kids the quality time? Are we making time for them? Are we making it clear to them that, my door is open, and if I am busy, let's figure out a time that we can sit down. One of the things that's really important to recognize is that teenagers will often give you the impression that they don't want to be around you, and a lot of the times that's true. But ultimately, they still need love, and they still need guidance and affection. They just are at a phase where they are trying to kind of, they're coming into their own, and this is a normal developmental stage. I think as a family saying, we're going to spend, half an hour on Friday just going for a walk. And if you have something in your calendar where you spend a little bit of time with each child, and if as a teen or whatever age, if you're willing to give that time to your parents, you might get to know something about them that you never would have known otherwise. Because if everyone's just rushing from here to there, you're missing an opportunity for a relationship. This author has an entire series on love languages for children and teens, and a special one also for men. And so I think it's worth it as parents to maybe look into those books as well, so that you can learn about your children and know what works for them. And again, it gives you the opportunity for the child to take the quiz as well as the parent.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, taking the quiz and understanding that language. Thank you. I think we can just do one more question. Okay. Just one for Dr. Loubna here. This came from one of our audience. So what advice do you have for kids who are growing up in a household with parents with an unstable marriage?
Unstable marriage.
So the youth who are kind of growing up in that household.
So what's advice to the kids or the parents?
To the kids, so that when they grow up and get married, they don't experience the same thing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
Yeah, that's
of course, it depends on the age of the kids. Of course, for the parents, like we try to advise the parents that like fighting or a lot of argument will cause stress on the kids. So try to avoid it. But at the same time, this is normal. It's going to happen no matter how many times we try to avoid it. It's going to happen, and especially if the marriage is suffering. So for the kids, you're not like just keeping, especially kids who are teens. I know they get affected more. Keeping in mind that you're not responsible for this or whatever fighting or happening between the parents. This is not your responsibility. This is not you cannot do anything about it. But for the future, if it's gonna cause any future concerns, or if this is causing stress during the time where it's happening, ask your parent. Try to be open with your parents. You know what? What's happening in the house is affecting me, or it's like this is causing a lot of stress, or this is how I feel. So try to be open about how you feel, if you can. Ask to talk to someone, if you can too. If I've seen kids who will have nightmares because of that, or it's really they can't focus, or they're feeling ashamed, guilt. Try to talk to someone, counselor in schools, or ask to see someone outside. Talk about it and see what kind of coping mechanism you can do. Try to probably do things that makes you feel I know it's hard, but separate yourself a little bit from what is going on in the house. Hopefully, the parents they will reconsider that they will reconsider fighting or involving the kids when you talk to your parents about it. This is causing us a lot of stress. I will really encourage kids to be honest with their parents.
All right, thank you. So, all right, we will conclude our program for tonight, inshallah. So I really thank, Imam. Oh, okay. Sure.
At the masjid, we average sometimes more than 15 families a week, even though I'm not a therapist, and I take your advice very seriously. The imam is not a marital therapist, but the imam does help out in turning off the fires. I really believe that if the imam has some experience, but he really needs to send them out to professional therapists, 100%. Just a few liners that I feel are necessary. There's a lot, but a few things that were mentioned here. Number one, we need to keep in mind that marriage is a ibadah. Ibadah requires spiritual presence. Ibadah requires a lot of patience. And this is why marriage is half of faith. So when we perfect our salah, when we perfect our fasting, when we perfect our hajj, we have to seek perfection in our marriages. It's a form of ibadah. Sometimes with our parents, they may yell at us, they might say things that we don't accept, don't make sense. Listening to our parents and remaining patient when dealing with our parents is ibadah, even if it may not make sense. In many things, our parents may say stuff that don't resonate with us, but we accept and we say sami'na wa ta'na because it's a form of worship. Marriage is also a form of worship that people really need to consider. So it requires patience, it requires ihsan, which is excellence, and inshallah, hopefully that helps. another point that I feel in our communities generally, because people come from different communities, is this idea of shame. People sometimes would rather their marriages to break up and to come to an end, and everything breaks apart than them just walking into a masjid and speaking to someone or reaching out to a counselor. And I feel that, I'm not sure if that's people are afraid to be exposed, or is it kibr? Not able to get to the root of it, but it does cause a lot of damage where someone is not willing to reach out and to ask and seek assistance. Another point that I would like to mention when it comes to the religious abuse, keep in mind that there is no hadith where he sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke the way he would speak in public at home, which means that he did not use his guidance, his prophetic tradition towards his spouse within his home. He was only a husband. And so to go into your house and say, yeah, but Islam said this. We live through the spirit of Islam, but we don't allow Islam to dictate these small conversations to prove points where there is a debate between both spouses. That is very unhealthy. And the Prophet ﷺ is our greatest model. He never used any hadith that he said on the minbar at home to prove a point towards his spouses. And I think this is very important to keep in mind. Sorry, I'm just trying to, last point. Also keep in mind, the small things count most. And I think a lot of people overlook that, and I love where you said it can be small gifts. Just saying thank you, just saying jazakumullah khair, just saying you're amazing. Small things hurt, and small things play a great, go a long way. So never belittle the small things. Even when it comes to divorces, sometimes when we're dealing with couples, and you look into their problems, there are things that they could have easily overcome. It's not major things. Most of the families that we deal with are not major issues at all. There's some major issues, but when we're talking about either my spouse is addicted to drugs, or my spouse cheated, or you do have some of those, but only a few. A lot of them have issues that could have been easily avoided. So the small things always count most, either good or bad. Always take that into consideration. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much.
Right, Jazakallah, Imam. So in conclusion, I just want to thank you, thank our amazing panel here, Dr. Hamzavi and Dr. Alkhayat, for the beautiful presentation and the great reminders. Definitely this will be helpful. And thank you, Imam Masmari, for the prophetic reminders, right? This is all tied with Islam. And thank you all for joining, and especially the people, everyone who actually came in person, and all our virtual audience. So thank you for joining, and inshallah we'll have all our regular mental wellness programming once a month. So the people, just like to put you on the spot, those who just came for the Isha, just please come a little bit earlier so you can actually enjoy our Friday night lectures. We have amazing programming, and it takes we have our panelists and all these speakers who are taking time, putting so much effort into bringing these programs to our community. So it will be really nice when we have an in-person program so that you can come in, show your presence, and it's such a barakah, honestly, to the masjid, to be in the masjid. I'm sure you all miss being in the masjid, right? So this is an amazing opportunity, so please do come, and thank you all. So inshallah we'll do a sham. So, assalamu alaikum.